Xenophage is an exotic heavy machine gun available from completing a quest involving lost sectors on the moon and the dungeon. Datto has a guide on it, and it's linked in the description. The intrinsic perk Pyrotoxin Rounds causes the weapon to fire high-powered explosive rounds. This weapon does not have a second intrinsic perk. Xenophage's stick is that it only deals damage as explosions. Since all damage is done as an explosion, this weapon functionally has 0 damage falloff. In PvE, Xenophage is an absolute powerhouse heavy weapon. Its damage output is stellar, mostly due in part to its absolutely brain-dead operating requirements. Just point it at what you want to damage, and as long as you're hitting your target, you'll be doing max damage. Since the damage is done entirely as explosions, you don't have to worry about aiming for precision shots. Just aim for the beefiest fatty part of the mob and hold the trigger down. I say aim for the big parts of enemies because the one big glaring thing about the weapon is that you will have to get used to its monster recoil. Every shot lurches your vision back and the weapon jumps up. It takes quite a bit to actually control the recoil even on mouse and keyboard. Another thing I want to point out is how this is also a machine gun, so it is in fact full auto. There's a little bit of weird behavior with firing it though. Holding down the trigger and firing it full auto is fine, but trying to single shot fire the weapon ends up creating a massive delay between shots. Even if you try to match the actual fire rate, your inputs just don't feel like they register. It isn't as much of an issue in PvE as it is in PvP, but I feel like it's still worth noting. This really only comes up in PvE when there's enemies that take like 2 to 3 shots and you're trying to single fire shots onto them to conserve ammo and not overkill things. Despite this weapon doing explosion damage, you don't really have that big of an explosion to work with in terms of AoE. This weapon should be thought of as a sniper rifle with explosive rounds. Hitting stuff around corners is going to be really hard, and firing into clumps of enemies won't exactly damage everything depending on how far they are spread out. The explosions are very much a single target explosion, if that makes any sort of sense. The real benefit to these explosions is that the gun doesn't have to worry about damage falloff. Weapons with timed and explosive payload are so good because you get to extend your range out a little bit more before you really start feeling the damage drop off. Xenophage's explosions mean that no matter where you are, no matter if you're hip firing or aiming down sights, you'll be doing the most damage the weapon can do. Another thing to take note of is the slower reload. At this point, it feels dumb to point this out since every class has some way to increase reload speed via abilities or armor mod choices, but hey, you absolutely should do one of those things to help alleviate the reload speed of Xenophage since it is the one thing that will probably interrupt you pumping out big damage. A special note here, the Actium War Rig exotic for Titans makes Xenophage amazing since you will not have to reload at all to dump your entire reserves. Xenophage is definitely one of the top tier exotic heavies, and you should have it in your arsenal if you're trying to be a top damage dealer or you just want to have the easiest time dealing some heavy damage. I highly recommend getting some machine gun reserves and scavengers just to increase the amount of fun you get to have with the weapon. All that being said, I am kind of torn about this gun. It has really good damage and it's incredibly fun to shoot. The combination of that right mechanical feel with recoil and the killer sound behind each shot just makes me swoon. It's a genuine pleasure to shoot each shot from this weapon. However, I really don't like how brain dead it is. There's no aiming for crit spots. There isn't some mechanic I'm trying to master with it like Deathbringer or Anarchy. It's just raw damage delivered in the simplest way possible. Due to the lack of mastery and growth one can have with the weapon, I'm probably only going to bring this out when it's time to melt something and my party members really want to get stuff done. Despite how much joy I have in shooting this gun, I find no joy in how it deals its damage. Really quick here before PvP, I don't normally talk about weapons in Gambit because it's this weird ecosystem that I don't like to pay attention to. I feel like I should mention Xenophage because it checks all of the boxes for what you want in a heavy weapon in Gambit. It kills very quickly against players and has some massive damage output against the actual enemies there. Conserve your ammo properly with this and you have one of the most lethal hitscan weapons here at your disposal. Now in PvP, I feel like Xenophage just isn't what you want to bring if you're trying to be serious or even at a casual level. It's a heavy weapon that doesn't kill in one shot first of all. If your target is full health, it will take 2 shots to kill them. The oddity with how this weapon fires when trying to single fire shots can lead to a lot of time in between shots and you might end up dead or just having your sights get flinched around. The second major thing is that you only get 4 shots with each heavy brick. That's just enough to get 2 kills, maybe more if people are really low health. Keep in mind, this weapon is also a machine gun. It has the normal behaviors of that weapon type. I point this out because a lot of heavy weapons can be used in a lot of scenarios like jumping around. Machine guns need your boots on the ground to be accurate, and when you only have 4 shots to actually hit your target, you're risking a lot by jumping around and being mobile. The big plus that this gun brings to PvP is its absolutely massive aim assist, hit scan for instant damage, and that's about it. It is great at cleaning up some kills, but so are a lot of other things. Normally, I can talk about how a weapon might not be the best choice for PvP, but it has some awesome power fantasy behind it that can really make you at least bring it out from time to time. Xenophage is leaving me struggling to find that power fantasy in PvP to give some sort of recommendation. I'm sure there are those out there that really like using it in this game mode. For me, I'm just looking at all the stats and numbers and not able to paint any sort of picture that makes this weapon something I would recommend to people. So all in all, Xenophage is definitely a weapon that has a defined niche in PvE. Its brutal damage and overall ease of use make it one of those weapons that you always want to have in your inventory. In PvP, it's basically the opposite, where it struggles to have any real defining characteristics aside from its aesthetics. Personally, I will probably be leaving this one in the bank since I like my loadouts to have some form of mastery behind them. Xenophage does a lot of the work for you, and I'm just not into that. I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, sharing it and a positive rating would be appreciated. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.